Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur. Really looking forward to the program today. Going to talk about leadership. We all love to see really good leadership taking place in our church, in our politics, at your workplace, wherever it is. And on the flip side, we really hate it when we see lousy leadership taking place, don't we? Right? So today's guest knows all about it. He's written a book on it. Dr. Kevin Leman needs no introduction, I think, but some of you maybe haven't heard of him, so I'll tell you. He's a psychologist, best-selling author. You've seen him on, Focus on the Family, on The View, on Oprah, wherever. He's been all over the map, okay? So very well known, knows his stuff. The latest book that he has out here, by the way, this is book, I think, 71. It's crazy. It's called Be a Great Leader by Friday, okay? So counting the days here. Shouldn't take me long. Okay, just going to read the book and I'm good. So his website is birthorderguy.com and his social media handle at Dr. Kevin Leman. So great to have you with us.
Hey, thank you, Paul. I've looked forward to this. I love going to Canada. I always run into people down here in the States in Arizona where I live with a Canadian plate. And I always feel like, boy, the person in that car is friendly and nice. Every time I've gone to Canada, I've spoke at up in your neck of the woods. I even went to the Moose Jaw and Saskatoon and of course
Saskatchewan, yeah.
And I've been to Toronto many times and
well, we're going to have a mutual, admiration club here. I love going to the States, and I find you folks very, very hospitable as well. So it's good. Good that we're neighbors and getting along pretty good here. Well, talking about leadership, let's get right to it here. I guess what's the most important thing any leader needs to learn, needs to live by?
Well, I think the number one thing is you have to understand that leadership is personal. Okay, in this day and age, and you were talking about, it's good to see leadership make progress today. I think we would agree. In our world, if there was ever a time where we need strong leadership, it's now. But the problem is, in your country and my country, we bring up kids to feel like they're the center of the universe, number one, which isn't good for kids, which isn't good toward training kids to be leaders. And so I always say, yeah, it's personal. You have to know who you serve, and you have to serve those you know. It's not rocket science. For example, here, I'll give you an example. I talked with a CEO recently, a young woman, and I asked her, I said, hey, what do you do when someone in your organization does something really well, outstanding? And she said, I send them an email. Well, Paul, in my biased opinion, that's the second dumbest thing you could do. The dumbest thing, of course, would be to just ignore that person's contribution. Okay. The second.
So it's kind of impersonal to send the email, right?
Yeah. I mean, who wants another email? But how about the handwritten note? How about the handwritten note that comes in the mail? How about calling that person and say, hey, is there any way you could free yourself up for lunch this week? I'd like to treat you to lunch or breakfast. And you look that person in the eye and you tell them how much you appreciate their talents and what they bring to the company, the organization, the church. How about this one? To your marriage. If you have to tell someone you're the leader, and many men do this, for example, in marriage, they tell their wives they're the leader. I got news for you, Jack. If you have to tell someone you're the leader, you're not the leader. Let's start with that. So they don't care. They don't care, Paul, what you know. I don't care what your place is as a leader. They don't care what you know until they know you care. So again,
I mean that's really old school. That's like old school advice here, right? I mean, don't email them. Get them a handwritten note. Take them for lunch. Look them in the eye. But you're bang on, Dr. Leman. I mean, which one are you going to remember? 10 years from now, you going to remember the email? No, but you'll never forget somebody, taking you out for lunch, looking in the eye, telling you how valuable you are, how important you are. That's something you'll remember forever.
Yeah. Let me put you on the spot on your own show.
Sure.
Who is it in your background when you were growing up who had your back no matter what? Now, I'm here to tell you, before you answer me, you're not going to give me a list of 20 people. You're not going to give me a
Yeah.
list of 10 people. You're probably going to tell me, well, this person or that person or my parents or my grandfather, but
Yeah.
how would you answer that question?
Yeah. Who had my back?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's those close to me who would make time for me, be there when it mattered, when they had to go out of their way. When it was inconvenient, they'd be there for me, whether it was my, best friend growing up, or my brother, or my dad, or my mom, or an uncle, that sort of thing. There was somebody who took the time, took the effort to make that
Well,
happen.
it sounds like you have more than one or two, which is unusual
Hmm.
because most of us, when we ask that question, and I've asked that question thousands of times across your country and mine,
Hmm.
the average is somewhere between one and two. But I always tell people if you see a turtle on a fence post, you know he didn't get there by himself. And so
That's
you have
good.
to be able to understand that you didn't get to where you are today, Paul, without the support and encouragement.
Hmm.
I call it vitamin E in my book. Everybody needs vitamin E, which is encouragement. But people
Hmm.
need some other vitamins too, like vitamin N, which is no. I mean, people who love you and care about you, when you go over the top on anything, they might give you a good shot of vitamin no, which is N, vitamin N, I call it. But it's no. It's the difference in
Hmm.
being an authoritarian leader where you just
Right.
tell people, hey, you're going to do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. We've tried that in parenting today, and that doesn't work very well. But
Hmm.
conversely, if you look at the permissive leader who is only driven by trying to be liked by everybody, or the permissive parent who wants to be liked by their children to the extreme, neither are effective, and both plant the seeds of rebellion in a person's life. So again, you have to
Hmm.
get behind the eyes of the people that you're leading. You can't lead. Now, here's an interesting statement, Paul. Listen to it. You can't lead people that you don't know.
Wow. Okay.
So if you're the
So,
CEO, for example, you better know all your
yeah.
vice presidents really well. If you're the manager, and I don't care if you're a manager of 9 or if you're the manager of 100, you better do your best to get to know every one of those individuals because when they feel like you care about them, they're going to want to follow you.
That's it. Very interesting. What do you say to a leader watching now saying, I just don't have the time to do that. How do I go about getting to know them? I can't take every single person for lunch. Any practical advice on that?
Well, when you ask that question, the first thing I think about is voicemail. When you call a company, they say, your call is very important to us. 47 minutes later, Paul, you're still on hold. I think we've institutionalized a way of slapping people in the face, and we try to sell the idea to them that we really care.
Yeah.
If you really care, you will go out of your way. We look at the Good Shepherd. Would the Good Shepherd, who has 100 sheep and one is lost, would he take time out to go and find that lost sheep that might be stuck in barbed wire somewhere? Yes, he would. And so,
Hmm.
if this sounds a little old fashioned to some, thank you for the compliment because we need to move in that direction. We become so impersonal today with people. It's crazy what we do.
Hmm.
And so,
Nose
loyal,
buried in our phone, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, my goodness, yes. Yeah. So, the simple power of touch. And I like to look at this
Hmm.
book, Be a Great Leader by Friday. I speak to CEO groups all the time. I speak
Yeah.
to management groups, managers, but I like to put it over to the family and to the intimate side of marriage. You know, Dad, I'll pick on you for a second. When you're a great dad to your daughter or your son, you know what your wife is thinking? She's thinking, I am so blessed to have a
Hmm.
husband like Paul or John or Timothy who will take the time because I know how busy he is. I know how stressed he is, but he takes time to be there for our daughter, to be there for our son. I contend that marriage I'll give you, it's not easy, but it's simple. There's a simple paradigm that makes it work. There's a simple paradigm that makes parenthood work. So as a leader, I'm just telling you that there are simple ways that you can become an effective leader by getting behind the eyes of the people you work with and understanding that they see life differently than you. So
Hmm.
if you're a leader, it's not only getting your people on the right bus, but it's getting them on the right seat on that bus. And that does take an effort. I recently was hired by a man who is very, very wealthy. He owns many, many car dealerships in the U.S. And he invited me to talk to his 45 top managers. And I sat there in the room waiting for him to arrive. And I sat there with a styrofoam cup of coffee and just watched. And he came in, he didn't see me, and I know this guy personally, but I watched him. And Paul, he went up to every person, all 45, and visited with them. Now, that process probably took a good 40 minutes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But I could listen in. He's asking about, hey, how's your son doing at college? How's your wife
Wow.
doing? Has she recovered from the, you know, why has this man become so successful? Because people know he cares. And so don't get hung up on all the technology and all the emails that we send out daily. Get caught up in being personal with people. Look for opportunity to enter someone's life on a one-to-one basis. You
Hmm.
started off the question about, well, what are you doing? You got 1,000 people out there. You get to know those managers of those 1,000 people as clearly as you can, and you take time out to visit that plant or that office. You go in and you order food in by DoorDash or something, and there you are, the CEO, and you're sitting around with 100 employees, okay? And they're looking and say, my goodness, I can't believe the big boss is here. Well, what
Yeah.
does that do to people? It tells them that I care about us and our product, and I want
Hmm.
to thank you for your hard work. Like I say, it is old school, but it works.
I love what you're talking about there. I mean, they'd go to the ends of the earth for somebody like that. And then, of course, those 45 managers catch that. It's being modeled for them. They pass it on down to their managers, the people they oversee, and it just expands and goes from there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
right now, for example, you've written 71 books. Bestsellers. You speak to these huge companies around the world. You don't need to give me any of your time, but yet you're here. We had a great conversation beforehand. You weren't up there. I'm down here. We're just speaking back and forth, just regular. You're being, the way you would term it in your book, you call it authentic, real. People love being around other people who are walking in humility, meekness. They're just being real, and then you're relatable. And there's something, I think, if leaders can do that, man, that's gold, isn't it?
Yeah, authentic is really a key word. I don't know if you knew who Herb Kelleher was, but Herb
Okay.
was the chairman of the board of Southwest Airlines. And if anyone has ever been on a plane in Southwest, I can guarantee you had more fun on that airline than any airline you've ever flown. He was the youngest of four children, and he believed that everything ought to be fun. In fact, one of his quotes was as follows. He said, at Southwest, we are in the service business. It's incidental that we also fly airplanes. And he was a CEO who would get on the airplane and he would hand out peanuts like a flight attendant.
Hmm.
And he was a funny guy. I got a chance to interview him. And Paul, I saved every letter or note the guy ever sent me because they were so encouraging and positive. And so you think of people in your life who went out of their way to
Mm-hmm.
be helpful to you. You don't forget those
Yep.
people. I
Oh
do
yeah.
New York TV a lot, so the Good Morning America,
Okay. Yep.
and I do Fox in New York and all those kind of shows. And in the green room, you get to meet people that you only see on TV. I mean, they're famous people. But the ones that I always enjoyed meeting the most were the ones that were down to earth.
Hmm.
They put their pants on like everybody else. And those people, I remember our conversations. I've met a lot of famous people who
Hmm.
I can't remember much about them other than shaking their hand and saying hello because there wasn't much there. But when someone takes a
Hmm.
personal interest in you, your ears go up and your heart becomes open to whatever they have to share with you. And so I say I can't uh, overemphasize the fact that good leadership is personal. And for example, I'm
Yeah.
a baby of the family, and I would just throw out this thought. Firstborn children and only born children, they buy product or service differently than us babies of the family.
Sure.
Uh, I've been involved in helping a lot of automotive people over the years, and I point out that a firstborn child or an only child will know more about the car than the salesman who's trying to sell you the car. They've read Car and Driver magazine.
Yep.
They know all the specs of the car. Us babies, we walk on a car lot, we'll say something profound like Shazam! Do you have a teal green one with gold trim? I'll take it. You know, we do things
Right.
differently. So if you're a boss, if you're a manager, you have to get your head around these people you work with and know that they do not see life like you do. Firstborn see life differently than middle children or babies of the family. So I'm known for the birth order book. Many trees died in
Hmm.
its honor. It's a great little book. I'll give you that. But it gets back to the individualization of every person. When people feel
Hmm.
like they're treated as a person and not a number, they're going to respond to whatever you're selling, Paul.
So you could actually be a leader and make a mistake by putting, like the baby of the family in charge of something that requires great detail and research and probably going to regret it later. And in fact, that person is probably, doing their best and not doing well. So if you did yourself and them a favor by getting to know who they are and putting them on the right seat on the bus, as you, referred to earlier, then good things are going to happen, right?
Yeah. And so know yourself as a leader. I'm the baby of the family. I
Hmm.
wish I could tell you I'm really well organized. I've had 16 editors in my writing career. And of the 16, 15 of them were firstborn or only born children. The other one,
Wow.
Paul, the other one was a liar. and and myself, I know that I need someone who's highly organized. My
Right.
assistant Debbie, my personal assistant, has been with me for 37 years.
Wow.
She plays the piano in her church. She's a firstborn. She's very well organized, and she helps this unorganized uh, baby of the family to do my thing in a much more organized manner than I normally would
Yeah.
without that help.
Yeah.
So as a leader, I'll give you a good one. You mentioned authenticity earlier.
Yeah.
Leave it to a group of psychologists. They went to a field of sheep and they took the shepherd out of the field and they found an imposter, someone of the similar build, who actually wore the exact clothing that the shepherd
Hmm.
had on. They put this imposter back in the field. They digitized the call of the shepherd. And it was interesting what happened. As that call went across the shepherd's field, all the shepherds, or all the sheep turned around, excuse me, and they looked at the shepherd. But not one sheep would follow the shepherd. Now, sheep aren't supposed to be real bright. I think they're brighter than
Yeah.
we're giving them credit for.
That's
So
pretty amazing.
if
Wow.
you're, yeah, it is amazing. So if you're not authentic with the people, if you're not a straight shooter with those you lead, then they're going to write you off as just a bag of wind
Hmm.
who is self centered. And that's the farthest thing
Yeah.
you want to be as a leader today. So be a great leader by
Okay.
Friday. I would tell anybody to read uh, my book I did with Bill Pentak called The Way of the Shepherd.
Right.
It's a wonderful little book. It's sort of the big picture of leadership. This book, Be a Great Leader by Friday, is sort of what do I do tomorrow to be a better effective manager or CEO or CFO.
So they really kind of
whatever
should
your
go
business is.
together, maybe like a
Yeah, yeah,
sandwich or something.
they're
So,
good reads. Yeah.
okay. Hey, let me ask you something, Dr. Leman. So can anybody, become a leader? It's kind of, it reminds you of the movie Ratatouille. Can anybody cook, right? Can,
You
can
know,
anybody become a leader? Or do you have to have certain traits? Were you always a leader? I mean, you talk
oh,
about, when you were younger, you didn't do well in school.
no, I was a flunky. I got in college on probation. Then they had the sense to throw me out. Uh, I came from Chicago, Illinois, from North Park University down to Tucson, Arizona. I got a job as a
hmm
janitor. Uh, and funny as it sounds, I met my wife in the men's room of that hospital. She was a nurse's aide, helping some
Well,
little guy go potty. But the more important thing is, she was the Christian. I was a heathen at that point,
okay.
and she was one of the key people in my life that turned my whole life around. And God gave me motivation and new direction. I went on, although I was thrown out of school by a dean of students. The miracle of my story was 10 years later, I was dean of students at the University of Arizona in Tucson.
That's
So
ironic. That's funny. Wow.
with God, all things are possible, right?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. You know what? We do need to put, I think, hope and vision into people's hearts. Yeah, God can do
Hey,
anything if we
you know
humble
what?
ourselves and apply ourselves, right?
Yeah. I just noticed something. I never answered your question because the question is, can anybody be a leader? And I'm going to answer that a little differently. It would be most
Okay.
appropriate for me to say, yes, Paul, anybody could be a great leader. But in my heart of hearts, I don't think that's true. I think your
Okay.
personality that God gave you, whatever it is,
Mm.
some are much more conducive to being a leader. There are
Of
people
course,
who
yeah.
are incredibly introspective. They wouldn't get up in front of a group and speak if they had to. You could pay them $1 million, they wouldn't do it. By the way, that's the number one fear of adults today is getting up and giving a talk in front of people.
Okay.
So I would say your personality that God gave you, and keep in mind that
Yeah.
your creator knows the number of hairs on your head. He
hmm
even gave identical twins different fingerprints. Why
Yeah.
would Almighty God give identical twins who have the same DNA different fingerprints? To help the Canadian Royal Police? To help the FBI? I don't think so. I think that was his way of saying, you are my son, you are my daughter.
Yeah.
And one of the
Yeah.
things I say in Be a Great Leader by Friday is, hey, you better know yourself. If you're a tricycle person, there's nothing wrong with being a tricycle person. Stay in that tricycle lane. But if you're a tricycle person and you go out there in the outside lane with the big dogs, I'm going to tell you something that's not real pleasant, and that is you're going to get run over. So
Mm-hmm.
know who you are. Can you still be productive and successful? Absolutely. It doesn't mean you're going to be an outstanding leader, however.
Right. Yeah, and that's okay. I think too, sometimes we live in a society where everybody wants to be, American Idol, whatever, become a star somewhere. And we want to encourage people to do well and to set good visions and goals and so forth. But you know what? It's like anything else, right? You can't have the fighter pilot be successful without the guy who's going to do the hard work, making sure the mechanical parts of that plane are keeping him alive, that sort of thing, right? Somebody's got to put fuel in there. Somebody's got to cook good food for the fighter pilots. It all goes hand in hand. And some people, frankly, like cooking good food and being in the background because that's how God has made them. And that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah, Paul, the irony of what you just said is what do you suppose your country and my country needs more of? We need more
Huh.
mechanics. We need more people who can fix things. We need people who can go in a computer and actually fix computers rather than just throw it out and buy a new one. It's
hmm
lacking in our school system. Our schools are catching on that what we used to call vocational education years ago is something that's really needed in your country and mine across the board.
Yeah, well said. I think we need to hear that. And again, not everybody is created to be the leader. We need the people who are supporting along the way, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, as I would see it anyway. Let me ask you, Dr. Leman, what do you want readers to remember the most about Be a Great Leader by Friday?
Well, the 3 R's of leadership, in my mind, are relationships, relationships, relationships. And it's really important that you realize if you're a leader, you're really going to have to excel at relationships. And that means getting behind the eyes of the people you work with, understanding that different people respond differently in almost all situations. But you have to have a caring heart. I'm doing a big event up in Phoenix, Arizona next week at a huge church. And I'm speaking on Proverbs 3, 1 through 6. Mm-hmm. That's King Solomon's words. And they say he was the smartest of them all. But in those little 6 verses, the word heart is used 3 times. And I think some of us, if we look at our spiritual life, we might need a spiritual alignment, sort of like when your car hits one of those wonderful holes they have up there in the North Country in Canada.
Well, we'll have to leave it there for the sake of time, but wow, thank you so much for just sharing from your life and these principles of how to be a good leader, and we can apply those to anywhere, including our families, as well as in the workplace and so forth. So thank you, Dr. Leman.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. God bless you. Appreciate you.
Oh, well, likewise. Yeah, so Be a Great Leader by Friday. That's available anywhere you get books, of course, and the website to check out here, birthorderguide.com or at Dr. Kevin Leman. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Appreciate it. Check out our website at WizeUp.ca. You can also watch episodes at app.corkleplus.com. God bless.